I promise I won't. But I do that. Hello. Hello. Welcome back, everybody. What's today? Sunday.
Evening, everyone.
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So welcome to Bible Prophecy and Truth.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone new, my name's Dan. I'm the author of BibleProphecyandTruth.com. This is my wife, Kelleen, co-hosting and chat moderating, and our sister in Christ, Diane, from Minnesota via Zoom.
From the big MN.
Yeah.
You're having bad weather.
Now the heat wave, I think, has passed, hasn't it?
Well, there's been a lot of rain.
But out now, and it's hot out right now. Today. It actually feels like summer. Lately, it's been cool and cloudy.
Yeah.
So welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about the news as it relates to biblical prophecy, and it's really exciting these days. And then we're going to do part 2 of our study of people in the Bible, and part 2 of Daniel. We're actually on part 11 of people in the Bible, but part 2 of Daniel. And we're going to talk about the later books in the book of Daniel and his life. So it'll be very exciting.
We just saw Jody.
Hey, Jody, welcome.
So would you kindly smash the like button? Please subscribe to the channel. Go to Rumble. Follow us there. Look at the banner. Pay attention to the banner because the banner has everything, all the places that you can get a hold of us at. Yeah. And then share this video with everybody you know, literally everybody that you know. Go to the libraries. There's like 3 different places that have the library. Well, not the website, not like a big, huge library of all
the videos. Website has all of our videos on it. And then the Rumble channel and YouTube have playlists of different subjects. And then, all you got to do is go to the different tabs. You can see all of our lives. Right. So,
and then turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any great uploads.
Yeah. So thank you. And we will
get started.
Well, I don't know why I always have to click that. So as usual, we always talk about the signs that Jesus gave that would herald his coming. When is the end of the world? The disciples asked him. And what shall be the signs of your coming? That was the question they asked him. And so he told them, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, wars and rumors of wars, signs in the heavens, just a number of signs. They're all happening right now. And it's at a point where things are escalating so much that there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that we are in the time of the end. There's I know that you might say, well, Dan, people said that back in the 1800s. I know, but the people that said that in the 1800s they were ignoring certain scriptures, because everything has to be happening that's supposed to happen. Literally everything. And not everything was happening back then. That's the difference between then and now. And then also in Daniel 12, as we're studying Daniel, in Daniel 12, it says the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Now that it's the time of the end, we can see the pictures that God painted so clearly. It's astounding. So look at earthquakes a little bit before we move on, because this is the thing, if you go to BibleProphecyandTruth.com, I know that for all of the new people, and scroll about 2/3 of the way down the front page until you see this picture here. This is where I have all the signs that Jesus gave and talk about all of that. And one of the things that, we watch earthquakes because this is mind-blowing. That what's the word I'm looking for? Just it's an amazing, just the amount of earthquakes that have happened, and nobody talks about it. But there's earthquakes happening where they normally don't happen, and just, I mean, it's one of the signs that Jesus gave. Earthquakes in diverse places, and
I wonder
wow.
why they don't.
Well, I think it's because they
it's something
can't.
major.
It's because they don't. It's nothing that they've made up. Kind of like the whole climate change lie, right? They made this up, and they make lots and lots of money from it. They can't make money on earthquakes, and they can't blame it on anyone. So they don't even talk about it because it doesn't make them any money. It's not worth it to them. So why talk about it? That's what I think. The dog is just, he's always got he usually just lays over there and sleeps. But
I always wonder,
sometimes he
like,
gets up and it's like he starts throwing his bone around. And
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why he's over there in the kitchen, but that's
I don't know. So there's been 4 greater than 6 in the last 7 days. We've had 2,196 earthquakes in the last 7 days. We're well on track. Over 120,000 worldwide again this year. Definitely on track for that. Lots and lots of 6 pluses. Had a number of 7s this year. It's just, I mean, this is something we have to watch. I mean, here's one in the Philippines, right? It was a 6.1 in the Philippines. Was a pretty rough one.
Well, maybe they aren't saying anything about it too, because it's
6.2 too.
It's somewhere else. It's not in the United States, and it's not major enough for them to say something. Because if it was a major earthquake, I mean, like 7 or 8,
be on the news.
It would definitely be on the news. Because there are some that are actually posted, reported.
True. Every once in a while they'll talk about one, but the massive number of earthquakes that have been happening around the world is just astounding. And that's the thing that it's like, well, how come nobody's talking about this spike, right? We had 200,000 earthquakes in 2020 and nobody said anything about it.
Because they probably, like she said, they're not major.
Yeah.
So they can't make any money on it, so why talk about it?
Or it's just not that newsy. People are going to be like, we don't care about 3 point whatever. It's like reporting everybody's storm. It's like, it's not necessary to report it. We're looking for it because it's a Bible sign.
Right.
But if we didn't know the signs of the Bible, I don't think I would care. So,
well, everybody's always talking about the possibility of asteroids hitting the planet and possibility of, doom and gloom, right? The Earth's going to come to an end. So you would think that this massive increase in earthquakes you would have the doomsayers talking about it, but they don't. I don't know why.
Satan
it's weird.
Has made it, put it in their head that it's not important.
Yeah, Satan doesn't want them talking about it because they don't want them looking at the Bible or anything. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. There definitely some earthquakes going on still. There's always something. The signs that Jesus gave are just happening right now. It's amazing. And if you have not seen that, watch the video series that's embedded, the YouTube video series embedded at the bottom of that document, and read through the document if you want. It's really, really good. So it's mind-blowing. And then here's this, this is so funny because, this is climate change. No, we used to call it summer. Because there's really nothing that unusual. We've had, the unusual thing is that we had record-breaking hurricane season. We had record-breaking winter storms, and then we're having record-breaking summer heat. But nobody's talking about that. All they want to talk about is, it's so hot. It's global warming.
People say that thing every summer, though.
Because
it's so hot here.
And you know why? It's
summer.
Because they've been pushing this lie for 35 years now. This is in 1989. They started this nonsense. And they were saying that entire nations could be wiped off the face of the earth by the year 2000 if we don't do something about it. And it's all nonsense. Science has shown us that this is nonsense over the last decade. I mean, there's actually an increase in ice in recent years in the Arctic, right? This is just a natural trend. The heat rises, it goes down. Sometimes it's warmer other years. I mean, this is normal. The thing that's not normal is these things back to back to back that are happening. But nobody talks about that. All they want to do is spout this nonsense of global warming.
Well, that's why they have
Which is a
Bible
lie.
Prophecy and Truth website.
Yeah, that's why we're here. So it's utter nonsense. I mean, if you actually, now I don't know if Google will actually give you the information, but if you go to Yandex or DuckDuckGo, you'll probably find some good information where scientists have actually said, no, this whole global warming thing is a lie. They're making up data. They're saying there's data where there's no recording equipment. They're lying just through their teeth, and it's just nonsense. If you didn't know that already, then please do the research because it's utter nonsense. So moving on. This is one of the guys we're watching because the Bible says that the Antichrist is going to rise among a union of 10 kings. And he's going to uproot 3 of those kings. And so we saw Libya and Egypt. The kings of Libya and Egypt were deposed and new governments were inserted, basically. And everybody was waiting for Syria years ago. But then, Assad just maintained his control of Syria for a long time, but then he was just deposed. And this new, rifle-toting jihad terrorist is now wearing a suit and is now the leader of Syria and rubbing elbows with world leaders, But here's the thing, we're watching because is this the third king or not? It might not be. We might just have 3 here, and it might not be anything. It might not be until the Antichrist actually rises, where he'll actually uproot 3 Islamic kings and take over their nations, and it may be something like that. But this might be it. We just have to wait and see, right? That's the thing about prophecy. There's things that we know are going to happen, and we can watch for those things, but we have to wait until it's fulfilled before we say that was it. So yeah, I don't know if this is it yet. We're still waiting to see. But this is one of the guys that we're watching big time. Is this guy going to rise and be the Antichrist? Right? Is he going? Wow. Is he the third king?
That's crazy.
It's very interesting to watch. And I really don't think he fits the role of the Antichrist, but there's a possibility. So we watch and we wait and we see what they do, what happens, where the world goes. And Syria allowed Israel to strike Iran from Syrian airspace, which is, why do you do that? The whole world's like, why is he doing this? We have to remember that this is a Sunni Muslim, that Assad and the Assad regime in Syria was always a Shiite regime. Even though Syria is mostly a Sunni Muslim nation, the government was a Shiite government. And, the Shiites and the Sunnis are always fighting with each other. And that they both think that they're the ones that are the true religion and the true descendants of Muhammad and all that. And it's all just infighting, for power and control.
All religions do that, though.
Yeah.
The Catholics against the Pentecostals, and the
all
Baptists
the
against the
false
Methodists.
religions do. Yeah.
Yeah, they squabble.
Yeah. And so we have to remember that Turkey is now the friend of Syria. Iran used to be the friend of Syria because it was a Shiite government. Well, now Turkey, they've turned their backs on Iran, and Iran has turned their backs on them because they're not Shiite, they're Sunni. And so now they're palling up with Erdogan and Turkey. And so this is, the quote here is, every blow to Iran is pure benefit to this guy's regime. And that's why, because they're against the Shiites.
So do we know if the Antichrist is if he's going to come from Shiite or Sunni?
We do not know. Now we know that the majority of Islam is Sunni. And there's only one nation really that is mostly Shiite,
and that's Iran.
The rest of
Okay.
the Muslim world and all the nations that are Muslim are Sunni.
Like Jordan.
Or the majority of Sunni, right?
Like Jordan.
Right. So
do they have to wear,
my
are
guess
they
would
as
be it'll be Sunni.
strict in the religion in Jordan as far as like the women wearing
Well, there's
hijabs?
Some of the
burqas?
countries are much more lax and don't force Sharia law strictly. And this is why there's an article I read just recently where it's talking about how Iran was 99% Muslim, and the vast majority of those Muslims were Shiite Muslim. Well, the new numbers, even though Iran will not admit it, the new numbers are that they're only down to about 50% that actually want Islam these days, because the Iranian regime was so strict and so harsh that it made all of the youth and all of the younger generation hate Islam. So in the past 20 years, Islam has become less popular in Iran. And that's why there's a rebellion happening right now in Iran, because they want to overthrow the regime, because they don't want anything to do with that.
Well, that's interesting that they can't enforce anything, really, because the younger generation doesn't like it.
Well, I've got an article I'm going to show you in a bit where it talks about they're coming down hard with the military, and they're arresting people and doing what they usually do, which is beating people, killing people, throwing them in jail, torturing them. So that's happening. And I really hope that they can see a regime change, right? I would like to see the king be able to come back and take over and make it a democratic country like he wants to. Now, not because I want them all to be happy with a lesser version of Islam, but because that would give them more of a chance to learn about Jesus. Because the regime in Iran was so tight and so strict that it even trying to go there and talk about Jesus, you're risking your life dearly. If the regime changes and they become a democratic Muslim nation, at least there would be a much broader pathway for teaching about Jesus there. So that would be the only reason I would be all in favor of that, other than the fact.
So Afghanistan, are they Sunni or Shiite?
The Afghans, I believe, are Sunni, for the mostly Sunni. That's
no, because when we pulled out our military, they were saying how now that America's out of here, things are going to be really strict.
Well,
Women could not go to school.
So let me clarify. Sharia law is Muslim. It's Islam.
Yeah.
It's not Sunni or Shiite.
Oh.
Some nations are more lax. But they all believe in Sharia law.
Oh.
So that's not a Sunni versus Shiite thing. That's all of Islam has Sharia law as their, and it's really it's a religion. It's a political religion. It's a religion of Sharia, of political rule. That's what they do. They come come into a nation, they turn it Muslim, and then they implement Sharia law. But it's, some of the modern nations like Jordan, for example, with King Abdullah II and his wife are kind of very, they're very modern and more lax, and they don't force all of that. Even in like Saudi Arabia, I think there's women that, they even allowed women to drive, right? If you don't understand Islam, you don't understand that for a woman to drive was illegal, and it for a long time, and they've only recently allowed women to actually drive. But then they're like trying to take that right away again in some countries. And there's a lot of kind of back and forth, because in Islam, women have no rights. They're equal to half of a man, and they have no rights whatsoever. And so, but there's a lot of resistance, because even, people that are raised in Islam, they don't have a choice, right? If you're raised in pretty much any other religion, you can choose whether or not you want to follow that religion or not.
Maybe it just depends on the household.
True. I mean, your father might be real strict, but once you leave, you can go out into your country and choose not to follow that religion. Mm-hmm. Well, in Islam, that is not the case. You can't leave your family and go out into the country and not be a Muslim in a Muslim country. They will kill you. They will literally kill you for trying to leave the religion.
And they basically have to get married too, right? So people could rule over them and stuff.
Well, women pretty much have to get married, yes. If you want to do anything, yeah. Otherwise, you live with your father for your whole life. Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot. There's a lot about, you can't just leave Islam. So the people that are born and raised in Islam, especially a lot of the younger generations, don't like it, but they don't say they're not Muslim because their family will kill them. So they're one of the three types of moderate Muslims, right? There's no such thing as a moderate Muslim. These types are the ones that identify as Muslim because of cultural and family and fear for their life, but they're not truly believers, right? They identify as Muslim, but in their heart they're not a Muslim.
Right.
And that's why you see so much resistance now, especially like we're watching in Iran, where, they're having a rebellion there because they're Muslim, but they don't like it. Now, if they get a new regime and it turns into a democratic Muslim nation, well, there are democratic Muslim nations, but they're still Muslim, and they still practice Sharia law, just a watered down version of it. And they still will kill you if you try to leave Islam. So there's still a lot about it.
Demand like burqas.
Right. So it would be easier to be a Muslim. And most of them, even under a new regime, would not leave Islam. They would just be happier with it because now it's not so strict.
It'd be more tolerable.
Right. So, and that's why the only reason I would care that a regime changed, number one is for all the atrocities and the murders and the horrible things that are happening in Iran. I want those to stop. But then the other reason is so that it's easier for someone like me to teach and talk to people in Iran, and for them to be able to find our channel, because now they're not so strictly watched and strictly controlled, and maybe to learn about Jesus. So that would be the only reason I would care. But we're watching this guy, so I know I spent a lot of time on this one screen. But I mean, this is it. We're definitely keeping our eye on this guy to see where this all goes. And then this is, the delusion that, we talk a lot about the Satan's lying wonders, and the delusion that people are under, that are deluded by those lying wonders of Satan, and how just absolutely insane they are. Well, it's not just the Western world, the ones that are deluded, it's the Muslims themselves. The Ayatollah is saying that Iran won.
I know. I saw that.
And it's like, and the only reason that, Americans got involved was because they were about to totally wipe out Israel. And so America got involved to stop that, even though all we did was bomb their nuclear bases, and that was it. But
yeah,
it's just, they're under, the Muslims are under an even stronger delusion, because Satan is really, really deep in all of Satan's demons, the minions of Satan, what do they call them in Islam? They call them the jinn.
Oh yeah.
And like genies, and from the movies and stuff. The jinn are literally demons, and there's a lot of demonic activity in Islam. You would be absolutely amazed at the amount of
Catholicism
demonic activity. Well, Catholicism in the Western world is people would freak out, right? More than and deep Muslim places. There's a lot of demonic
like Iran
activity.
and Pakistan or Afghanistan, where all women are wearing burqas. They have to wear They have to get into full burqa when a man comes to their apartment or house or whatever, and their husband has to be home, and that woman has to get in full burqa in the privacy of her own home.
And that's
it's really bad.
I've seen a lot of documentation of stuff that happens in Islam that it would just is weird and scary stuff.
Yeah.
But they're so, it's because Satan's lies are just absolute. They're believed by these people. They're just so deluded. It's crazy.
But I can also understand why the women are fearful of speaking out about anything.
Yes, of course.
Their husband has a right and a command to beat them if they don't
and then
obey.
Kill them.
And
he could even kill his wife, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's called honor killing in Islam. Yeah. So it's just crazy the amount of delusion. And then a couple other things, the Trump's strikes on Iran were, I've mentioned this a couple of times, and there's more stuff coming out about it. So, the strikes in Iran, remember, Trump's whole thing is peace through strength. And in order to have peace through strength, you have to show your strength. And that's exactly what he did with his strikes on Iran. We went in, had not even a scratch, not even a bullet was fired at us. Went in, took them out, and got out. Totally obliterated the sites. That's a major show of strength. And it was a signal.
Control. I mean, it was like total precision and control of the situation.
Yeah.
And
It was a show of strength, and it was a very strong signal to Xi Jinping and Putin, which is exactly
I'd be
what he wanted
afraid.
to do.
Daddy Trump's going to come for
Yeah.
him.
And then, there's a lot being talked about with China right now. And this was an interesting article that I saw where, China's economic spiral, we've talked about that in previous lives. And, the coming Taiwan war it's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
And we know that China's had their 100-year plan. They're about 80 years in on their 100-year plan to take over the world. It's literally been 80 years where they've been planning to take over the world. And they're escalating. They're trying to speed things up right now because of China's problems. And they want to conclude it. That's why they're pushing BRICS so hard, and they're going to go into Taiwan. It's like I said, it's just a matter of when, not if.
Has there been anything said about them wanting to take over Taiwan recently?
Well, nothing new
Yeah.
that I know of, but everything. What Xi Jinping right now is, or how do you say Xi Jinping? Something like
their
that.
last name goes first, so it's
Yeah.
his first name is Jinping.
Jinping. Yeah. Anyway, he's actually murdering a lot of his high-level people because they're talking. The CCP is talking about regime change themselves and deposing Xi Jinping, and so there's actual evidence of him. He's been murdering these people that want to get rid of him. And so there's major upheavals going on in China right now. But the CCP, even if Xi Jinping loses power, the CCP is going to remain in power. They're just going to put another person up in his place.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens with that. Like I said, if you've been with us for a long time, you've seen where I believe it's China that's going to be very involved in what the world, the war of the sixth trumpet is going to be, the sixth trumpet war of the book of Revelation. I believe that the visions that John saw and the things that he tried to describe were, I believe that China fits that role very, very well. And it's just, when we look at what's going on in the world and we see what the end time looks like, and I believe that China is probably going to take a major brunt of the death toll from that war. But again, we can't say exactly what we know. We know what the prophecy is and what's going to happen, but we can't say exactly how it's going to play out until it does. So that's why I always have to throw a caveat. Well, we don't know yet. We're watching. We're waiting. We know what's coming. We're just watching to see exactly how it does play out. Yeah. And then, this is Islam. The Syrian army top dog to Christians. Either you submit or you will be subject to the jizya, which is basically like they're like the mob, right? You have to pay them for protection, right? So they won't kill you. And that's exactly what Islam does. If you won't convert to Islam, they'll either kill you or you can submit to them and pay the tax, the jizya, and be a dog under their feet, but they'll let you live. That's really that's how they treat non-Muslims. And you'll face war. They'll come to kill you. So that's Islam. Yeah, it is. And then it's amazing how much is going on. It's escalating, just huge escalation. That nobody talks about this. The Muslims murdered 218 Christians, just slaughtered them in Nigeria. Nobody says anything about it because, well, it can't be blamed on Israel right? And it doesn't affirm the media narrative of how Muslims are really the victims. So they don't want to talk about it because the Muslims are the aggressors here, slaughtering, murdering people. It's just amazing how the world is so under Satan's control.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing to
It's
me.
very obvious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's a Muslim, right? This is talking about, and I've shown videos of these Muslims, not this one, but other ones, talking about how the Muslims plan to take over America. Well, big change coming. We nominate a Muslim mayor. Then we nominate people in the school board of education.
Mm-hmm.
This is how the demographic change begins. We have the most children because Muslims are just, they're
Popping out babies.
they're the most. What's the word I'm looking for?
Fertile.
Fertile,
procreating
race, or it's not a race, but the most
mixed videos.
procreating
People.
Hey, mixed videos. Good to see you.
Not even.
Not even the UN talks about it. Yeah. It's because they're controlled by Satan and his minions. And that's, but this is exactly what they're doing in Europe. This is exactly what they're doing in the United States and Canada, literally all the Western nations. They're in the past few decades, they've started this major push, and they've gone very far into Europe. They're just starting it here.
And the thing is we don't. The Bible doesn't say what happens to the United States.
No,
right.
It doesn't.
So we have no idea.
And we don't know.
It's
the outcome.
If Trump gets assassinated, which we have to hope and pray he doesn't, they're going to try and get a Muslim person into the White House.
Oh, eventually they will. Yeah. If they had time. Yeah.
Yeah.
The United States could be hurt so badly in the war that we're more like a third world country when the Antichrist is in
power. We don't know. We may be totally taken over by Islam.
Right. I hope not that.
The world,
me too.
The world will
no
be.
Idea.
When the Antichrist is in power, he's almost absolute certainty the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim.
But he's going to be fighting. He is also going to be fighting wars, and I'm really hoping that one of those is the U.S.
Right. That's the
because
hope.
we won't submit the way they want us to. So we have to pray for that.
We can hope for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Because, and then we'll still be able to preach Jesus Christ during that time, which is that's the whole thing, right? When that day comes and you're controlled by the Antichrist, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to have to convert, or they'll kill you. You have to convert to Islam.
Oh, well, I'll be meeting Jesus.
And this is why Satan has, for us. But this is why Satan has the Catholic Church, pushing this interfaith lie. Because if you believe that you'll still be saved if you're a Muslim, then why wouldn't you convert to save your life? Because if you think you're still going to go to heaven, who cares, right? That's why Satan has pushed this interfaith lie through the Catholic Church, because he wants everybody to be comfortable with, he's setting up the world literally for his rulership with the Antichrist. And that if you're comfortable being a Muslim to save your own life and think you're going to go to heaven, then he's already got you. Yeah. So, that's another thing we're watching to see, time is so short right now that we know that they don't have time to complete the takeover of America.
No.
But with the war and the way things could escalate with a war, it could happen very quickly, and we could be under the rule of the Antichrist when he takes over the world. So it just depends where we're at when that happens. This is part of this, right? This New York mayor candidate, right? He is a Obama Muslim Brotherhood Trojan horse, absolute, certain, 100%.
Yeah.
This guy is there to destroy.
Yeah.
And they're, I even saw a street reporter talking to people. Well, why did you vote for him? Well, we need somebody different.
Well, they don't like Cuomo. It was just the primary.
I know.
They didn't want Cuomo.
I know. And it's like, well, we got to have somebody different. And they really have no idea what this guy is going to do to New York.
He's not in yet. But.
Better, more affordable housing and, food. And, they think socialism is going to be okay for some strange reason.
The strange thing.
Weird.
The strange thing. And it's practicing takia, because he's lying. He supports the LGBTQ community.
He's making
when Muslims hate
right. And
LGBTQ.
That's all part of takia.
Yes.
They're lying.
Because he wants votes. He wants support.
Yeah.
And mixed videos.
That's one more theory.
It says, there's one more theory. It says Christians, Jews, and Muslims will come together to gather in the end as Abraham's son came together in his funeral. That's part of the Catholic prophecies, right?
Yeah.
The false prophecies of Catholicism that Satan has set up is that the final emperor and the final war, there's going to be a war to wipe out the apostates. And that's the whole thing with this interfaithism is they've got this new temple in Abu Dhabi now where they've got the Jewish and the Christian and the Muslim temple there. And they're all three religions are going to come together in the end. And it'll be a one world religion that this final glory, the final emperor and the final glorious pope are going to implement. Mm-hmm. That's part of Satan's false prophecies in Catholicism. Yeah. And it's, that's the thing though. You have to remember that Muslims don't believe that. Muslims do not believe in interfaithism.
They don't.
They're letting everybody else go along. They're going along with it just to.
But they don't support Jews.
Well, no,
they don't support Christians.
And they hate Christians.
So people need to wake up. No, they are not unified with other religions. The
Catholic Church is a part of their Christians' faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
But that's the thing is, that's why I'm always saying it's not going to be a merging of Catholicism and Islam. It's going to be a submission of Catholicism to Islam.
They don't support any of that.
Because Muslims don't believe in interfaith.
No.
They're going along with it, making us think that they're going along with it only to get to a point where they can take over.
Right.
Yeah. That's all they care about.
They want people to submit to them. So they're not going to support you in whatever religion you're choosing. Yeah. It's Islam or the highway.
Yeah. Once Islam is the majority and Sharia law is implemented, they're not going to be going along with any religion. You either convert or die. That's the way they are and always have been. Mm-hmm. And that's even in the prophecies of the Bible, the Antichrist is going to be the Muslim Mahdi, and the Antichrist is going to murder everyone that won't submit to his new religion and worship him. And that's one thing I'm going to show you in a little bit is Muslims really do think that their Mahdi is like a divine being. I'm going to show you in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I had to point this out. The CNN eats crow.
Yeah.
Because what did CNN do immediately after the strikes? Well, they're saying, they didn't do any damage and it didn't even work.
Yeah.
But it was just lies, outright lies. And, because the strikes worked, they totally obliterated those sites.
Has it been total ceasefire between Israel?
Well, the ceasefire has been maintained from what I haven't heard anything different. So
there's peace
so
talks.
Far.
The Abraham Accords are supposed to be really pushed right now.
Yeah.
And there's other nations that have already agreed. So many,
Yeah.
several different nations that have already agreed.
I've got several
Oh,
articles to talk about in a minute.
to get on board with the
Yeah.
Abraham Accords.
It's coming. Yeah.
I know.
Gog Magog origin. So I know that you've been with us before, Mixed Videos, and I've talked about this in the past. Where I'm gonna point you to an article.
Why don't you just post a
that I
link in
wrote.
there and you can go.
Yeah, I'll post a link to it. If you go to BibleProphecyAndTruth.com, go to the notes menu and go to the e-newsletters archive. Now this is for people who watch later, so because they won't be able to see the link.
Oh,
But then just search for Gog
yeah.
on the flat list, and you'll see this Gog and Magog war. And I'm going to go ahead and post the link for you. But for people that are watching later, you'll have to search for it.
There you go, Barb.
But this I talk about Gog and Magog and what it really is. And you know, there's so many of these false teachers out there trying to say that, you know, Meshach is Russia. Well, no, it's not. Meshach was the son of Japheth.
I know, he's the person.
Magog, Gomer, Tubal, Meshach are all sons of Japheth, the son of Noah.
Well, where did Bendigo come from?
Well, that was at the time of the Babylonian captivity, many years later.
So it's like it's like Jessica and Jennifer. Like there's many.
What are you talking about?
So these are the old. There's another Meshach and Peshach and Abednego or whatever. There's other
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego at the time of Daniel. So they had the same name.
It was a common name. Okay. Because I'm thinking, is that our Meshach?
I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Yeah, no, this Japheth was one of the three sons of Noah that came with him on the boat. And Magog, Tubal, Meshach, these are all names that are talked about in Ezekiel 38 that people try to say is Russia. Well, no, if we look at Revelation 20, this just points it out so clearly. The devil's going to go out and deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. So the four quarters of the earth is the whole earth, right?
Yeah.
The four quarters is the whole thing.
4 quarters is the whole.
What?
4 quarters is a whole.
That's right.
Yes. And so Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. It's the whole world, literally. Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and Gog and Magog in Revelation 20 are the whole world. In Ezekiel 38, it's when the Antichrist brings the armies that he controls down to try to take over Israel and wipe them out. In Revelation 20, it's the whole world that Satan goes to deceive. So you can read that article if you want. Just wanted to point that out.
It's a segue.
Yeah. So that was just silly. I wanted to point this out because I've told everyone. So Gog and Magog represents the whole world, literally. And so Gog and Magog, at the time of the Antichrist, when he's bringing the armies down at the end of the wrath of God at the Battle of Armageddon, that's the same battle as Gog and Magog. Yes. I even mentioned that on this article. If you continue reading, I talk about how that's, Revelation 19 and Ezekiel 39 have the same things in them. It's the same battle in Ezekiel 38 as it is in Revelation 16 and 19. So it definitely comes after the rapture, because the rapture comes immediately before the wrath of God at the end of the tribulation. So Gog and Magog will appear after the rapture, definitely. It's the seventh or the sixth trumpet is when, I'm sorry, not the sixth trumpet. The sixth vial is when the Euphrates River is dried up and made way for the kings of the east, right? The battle of Armageddon. So that's all the same thing. I know that there's so many false teachers out there trying to say that they're all different. They're different things. And waiting for the Ezekiel 38, that's not going to happen until the Antichrist has been in power for 3.5 years. So yes, definitely will come after the rapture. I'm just making sure that you understand when the rapture happens, because that's not going to be until the end of the tribulation.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to point this out because I've talked about how Microsoft banned me from advertising on Bing for my ad on who is Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
There's a war against Christianity. And I just wanted to point this out. This is something new that I saw. The Holy Bible Posts is an X account. And they paused. They're banning their ability to have any revenue or anything. Basically doing the same thing that X did to me. X actually banned my ads.
That's not free speech.
It's
I'm
not
sorry.
free speech at all. No, Elon Musk is not about free speech.
No,
it's
he's
about
not.
getting you to believe what he wants you to believe. And
He's got people
on his mission to Mars. That's all he cares about. And they banned me on X they wouldn't even tell me why. They just banned me and wouldn't let me advertise anymore. Here's another X account, right? I've seen multiples of these over and over where Christian accounts are being banned or shadow banned is more of what they're doing to us, is shadow banning us. And it's just, X is not free speech, not in any way, shape, or form. So just, I have to keep pointing that out when I see it. And then this is what I was talking about in Iran. They're actually having a rebellion, but the military is, they're cracking down with executions. So they're murdering people that are rising up, and mass arrests, military deployments, because in Iran right now, they want regime change, and they're having a revolt or rebelling right now. And what are they doing? Mass arrests, executions, murdering people, bringing their military out. That's what's happening. So I really hope that there is a regime change, but it's all up to God, right? It's all up to God. If he wants regime change, there will be regime change.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it may be that Iran is going to be the spark that lights the nuclear fire that is the sixth trumpet, and maybe it just needs to happen. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I want to point out, God does not cause these things. God does not cause evil. God's grieved at his heart right now, just like he was in Genesis chapter 6. God was grieved at his heart at the wickedness of man, that there was violence everywhere in the world, and God hated it. That's why he flooded the world, and that's why Jesus said it would be as the days of Noah when he returns. And we're there. The earth is filled with violence and evil and wickedness, and God's grieved at his heart.
Mm-hmm.
He's not causing this stuff. He's just allowing mankind to rule himself.
He's just using it.
And look what we're doing. This is horrible what mankind is doing, ruling himself. It's just evil. So I'm glad that Jesus is going to come and stop all of that, because remember, when he comes, as we're talking about in Daniel, and we're going to go there in just a second, where last time we ended at Daniel chapter 7, and where the return of Christ, where he puts down the governments of men and takes over the world. There's not going to be any more wars after that. God's not going to allow all this evil and wickedness and wars to happen when he's here ruling. I can't wait for that day to come. So sick of the evil in the world. But this is what Iranians are saying about the possible fall of the regime: freedom, right? This is what they want. They want to be out from under this strict.
Well, I don't know if they're going to be totally free, but it might ease up what they're going through now.
Exactly, which is what we were talking about earlier.
There's still an Islamic country, and
Right.
you
And
can only get so free.
it'll
So,
still be an Islamic country, but it'll be more like Egypt and Saudi Arabia instead of being very, very strict Sharia law. Yeah.
mhm. Iran
Uh,
at one time was like a
Well,
regular.
back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
free. They didn't even wear hijabs unless they wanted
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So that's enough about that. Now, what you were talking about.
Oh yeah.
Witkoff's talking about the expansion of the Abraham Accords
Yeah.
coming in weeks, right?
Ooh.
Weeks.
Yeah,
Trump's
that would make sense.
Trump's busy, but so is Witkoff, and they're working really hard to make the Abraham
Yeah.
Accords happen.
8 weeks, the end of summer.
Yeah.
Weeks, literally.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. And yes, exactly. Mixed videos. Christians are not following the Bible. In
Not
fact,
one
that's
more
why
reason.
I coined the term Catholic Churchianity, because that's really all the Protestants are these days. Is really they're the daughters of the great whore, right? They're churchians. The Catholics only believe in church, and that's their religion, is their church, and that's going to save them. And Christians today, the Protestants, the Baptists, all of the 40,000 denominations of Christian are all just churchians. They're all just thinking that church is what saves them. They don't repent. They don't love God. They don't follow him in obedience. They're just churchians. And they think that they're going to be saved just because they go and sit in a pew once a week. You're absolutely right. They're not following the commands of the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen.
So this is exciting.
It's very
And
exciting.
this is going to roll right into what we're talking about in Daniel. It's actually good timing because we're talking about Daniel and the prophecies that are about to happen, literally. And this is really cool. This is, why do we care about the Abraham Accords? Because the Abraham Accords are very likely to be what God calls the confirmation of the covenant in Daniel chapter 9, which we're going to look at here in just a couple of minutes. And it says that there will be a peace treaty.
Mhm.
The confirmation of the covenant is the covenant that God made with Abraham, that Israel has a right to exist,
Mhm.
and these are her borders. And that's what the Abraham Accords are going to provide, is the world. If the Abraham Accords are successful, many will sign a peace treaty, which will give Israel the right to exist and will draw her borders.
And it'll
Whether
just
or
be
not-
peaceful, basically.
And they
right?
are willing to sign it. They're ready. They're willing to
Yeah.
sign it. Trump.
They're all stepping
know.
up and saying, if this thing comes
Yeah.
to fruition, we are going to sign
Yeah.
it. We
And
want to
it's-
sign it.
And we know it's going to happen.
Ooh.
Again, it's one of those things that we know from prophecy. It is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
And we're looking at possibly weeks from now,
Ooh.
which is just totally
Ooh.
awesome.
I just want to see that
Yeah.
that prophetic thing happen.
Yeah.
I know, me
Oh,
too.
I know. And here Netanyahu's agreeing to a two-state solution. Whoa. With a reformed Palestinian Authority, right? So
Look at Trump.
the peace treaty and the confirmation of the covenant could happen with or without a two-state solution. But as I've said for a long time, I think it's probably going to be a two-state solution. And the UN is going to go in there and multiple nations will go in there with their combined armies in Jerusalem to force the peace between the Muslims and the Israelis, right?
Mhm.
That's why they're the two-state solution. They'll create a Palestinian state because one does not exist right now.
Mhm.
There is no such thing as a Palestinian, but they claim it. And so that's what the two-state solution is all about. So it could be either way, but Netanyahu agreeing to that is like,
Yeah.
wow.
I just wanted to remind Annie of the time. Didn't you say you had to make a phone call?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got a couple.
Oh,
minutes.
7:30.
Yeah.
So Abbas, the Palestinian Authority ruler, offers to work with Trump to broker a peace deal, which is another huge step.
Woo!
So
Yes.
I'm really excited.
Hello. Isn't this kind of obvious?
It's happening soon.
I know I'm really excited about this.
Me too.
You know, and again, you know, we
Wow.
can't say it's happening
Till we see it.
until it happens,
Mhm.
but it sure looks like it's coming soon. So this is just absolutely awesome.
Sure is.
And then, you know, I had to post this because I've seen there's so much going on X right now, and I do the same thing on X that I've tried to do on every social media platform I've ever joined, and that's to try to help dispel the lies of Satan. And you know, there's so many people that are so confused. It's absolutely mind-blowing
Yeah.
how confused people are. There's so many different ideas of this whole interfaith garbage, and you know, all religions worship the same God. No, they do not. You know, Islam worships Satan. Islam came from, it's like we talked about this last time, or the time, or no, a couple, when we talked about Ishmael a couple of lives ago. We talked about how, you know, that Islam really came from the Baal of the Old Testament, and the Baal of the Moabites, and worshiping the heavenly bodies, and the moon being the largest in the sky was the great God, which is what Allah, the pagan Allah, was the moon god. And that's what Muhammad used to create his new monotheistic religion. So
Israel
is already not occupying the promised area, and they want to divide. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. You're going to have to explain. But I wanted, you know, there's no such thing as Islamophobia. If you understand Islam and you don't like murder, rape, slavery, treating women as lesser human beings, if you don't like any of that, you don't like Islam. But if you speak about it at all, you're called an Islamophobe. And it's just because if you know more than they want you to know about Islam, then they start shouting Islamophobia. It's because when you learn about Islam, you hate it and you want nothing to do with it. So if you go to videos.prophecyandtruth.com.
And we're not the only ones that are saying that.
Well,
because
no.
I've heard
There's
so
a lot of
many
people.
podcasts and people speaking out against
People
Islam.
are finally starting to see the truth. If you go to videos.prophecyandtruth.com and just click on this false religions menu item, I talk about Islam, the Mormons, rabbinic Jews, Hindus, and Buddhists, and the Catholic Church, and you know, the whole interfaith lie. Check out those videos. You probably find them interesting. At least I hope.
Go to all the libraries and watch all the.
Hmm?
So go to all the libraries and watch all the
videos. Yeah, go to the videos.prophecyandtruth.com and just watch all, you know, binge watch there, because there's lots and lots of videos. I wanted to point this out. This is one thing I mentioned earlier too, was that the Muslims actually believe that the Mahdi is going to be a divine being. And so, you know, when the Bible talks about the Antichrist being worshipped, this goes right along with what the Muslims believe about their Mahdi, because this is a letter that was written, you know, from a senior Shia cleric, you know, urging Muslims to punish President Trump for threatening their supreme leader, you know, Ayatollah Khomeini.
Yeah.
It's a letter that was written, and it translates the letter for us in this post. But the thing I wanted to point out is this: the end of this letter says, "God willing, the Almighty will make the blessed existence of His Eminence, Imam Mahdi, may God hasten his reappearance, pleased with all of us."
Yeah.
They're saying that this is a divine being.
Oh yeah. Well, it's their God.
The Mahdi.
Yeah.
And they're going to worship him, and they're going to force the world to worship him, just as the prophecies of the Bible say the world is going to be forced to worship the Antichrist. I just thought that was very interesting to see Muslims saying this in their letter, right? This is what they believe. It proves it to us. So I think that's all I got. Yeah. So we can talk about Daniel now, because this the study that we're doing on Daniel right now rolls right into all of this that we just saw in the news. Literally, we've talked about the life of Daniel and how, he became, a very high official in the Babylonian Empire because of God's favor on him. And all the things that happen, all the prophecies, the prophecy of the statue from Daniel 2 shows us that the final 5th section is going to be in power when Christ returns. Well, the same thing that we were talking about last time, when Christ returns, we also see that in the prophecy of Daniel 7, where all of these beasts are going to exist at the time Christ returns. All of them, all 4 of them will exist at the time of Christ returns. And it's, at the end, judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, talking about the 4th beast, and to consume and destroy it till the end. Christ returns and puts down the governments of men and takes over the world. This is the same thing that we saw in Daniel 2 when Christ returns. It's the same thing that we see in Revelation when Christ rules for the 1,000-year reign. When he returns, takes his people out, pours out his wrath, and takes out the Antichrist and his armies, and then rules for 1,000 years on the planet from Jerusalem. And all of these prophecies lead up to that point. That's the thing about prophecy, is it literally everything is about Jesus Christ. It's about the man that God became, because God became a man in Jesus Christ. And that's what we understand as Christians, is that Jesus is God manifest in the flesh, as the scriptures tell us. And he's going to return, and he's going to put down the governments of men, and he's going to take over the world. But before that, we see all the prophecies of what the Antichrist is going to do. This is where, we see that he's going to, the 4th beast here is going to be this 10-horned kingdom, right? And he's going to be the man. He's not going to be one of those 10 kings. He's going to rule those 10 kings. And it's the final beast and notice in this that the final beast is destroyed, right? The final beast is going to be completely destroyed, but I'm going to show you here. The final beast is slain, the 4th beast, but the rest of the beasts live on, right? The whole world is not destroyed at the coming of Christ. Mm-hmm. The Antichrist and his kingdom and his military is destroyed at the coming of Christ, but the lion, the bear, and the leopard, the other 3 nations that the 10-horned kingdom of the Antichrist is going to align with the lion, the bear, and the leopard, 3 other nations. I know I've talked about this a lot, but I want to try to just help everybody really pull it all together. That the lion, the bear, and the leopard, these other nations are going to remain after Christ returns. It's only the 4th beast that is destroyed. It's the 10-nation alliance of the Islamic Antichrist that will be wiped out when Christ returns. And most likely it's Britain, Germany, and Russia that are the lion, the bear, and the leopard will remain during those 1,000 years. And that's who's going to, their lives were prolonged for a season at a time. And that's who's going to be alive during the reign of Christ, that we're helping Christ rule as kings and priests, to rule with him, to rule over those nations that remain. So
that sounded so different this time you've talked about that.
Oh, that they're going to remain.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've talked about that before.
I know, but see,
Talked
this
about it
is
many times.
this is what I think about scripture is that you can listen to the same verse day in and day out, but then all of a sudden you go, oh, wow, like you just heard it for the first time.
Yeah.
Because I know that Christ is going to come back and rule the earth for 1,000 years, but I kind of don't remember you saying those three nations
Yeah.
are going to remain.
It's just because
Yeah.
it's just
And
like an
remember-
understanding of it now.
And
Yeah,
remember
I
in
think so.
Zechariah,
Mhm.
it tells us that 2/3 of the Jews that don't believe in Jesus, the Jews that believe in rabbinic Judaism, that don't believe in Christ, are waiting for their Mashiach. 2/3 of them are going to die,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but 1/3 will remain. That will
Go into
the 1,000-year reign as well. So this is what the 1,000-year reign is for, a final attempt at God to save as many people as he possibly can.
Mhm. But I
So-
wonder why those three countries.
Well, it's just
I
because
know.
they were mentioned earlier, right? The lion, the
Yeah.
bear, and the leopard are, remember in Revelation 13, the lion, the bear, and the leopard join up with the fourth beast and they all become one beast.
Mhm.
So because of that, that's why they're specifically mentioned. It's not
I know.
that-
I think
it's not that they're the only nations that are going to remain. It's just the ones that were mentioned besides the fourth beast will remain. That's what it means.
Oh, okay. I get
Yeah.
it now.
So they're mentioned, but only the fourth beast is going to be killed.
Book of Daniel
Yeah.
is 1,000 year.
The 1,000-year rule is not in the book of Daniel. No,
It's in Revelation, right?
it's in Revelation. Yeah. But we're going to talk about the last days and the timing of it right now, because this is what I'm leading up to. Is, when we look at Daniel 7, we also see, that the Antichrist here is, they're given into his hand a time, times, and the dividing of time, which is a year, 2 years, and half a year. It's 3.5 years, which is, and I can prove that to you right now, because when we look in Revelation 13, power was given to him to continue 42 months, which 42 months is 3.5 years. So when Daniel says a time, times, and dividing a time, that's the same thing as a 3.5 year period. And then you're going to see again in Daniel 12 that it's 1,290 days, and 1,260 days is the time of the Antichrist, which again is 3.5 years. So this is, the dominion of man is going to be taken away and Christ will reign. So the 1,000-year rule is not specifically mentioned in Daniel, but we see that this is when Christ returns. In Daniel 2, the end of the prophecy is Christ returning and destroying the kingdoms of men and taking over. And in Daniel 7, we see that Christ returns, and the kingdom and dominion and greatness of the kingdom unto the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. This is Christ returning and taking over, and mankind is done ruling himself at this point. So this is the beginning of the 1,000-year reign here that it's talking about. Absolutely. So one of the things, we're going to move on and continue talking about Daniel and his prophecies and his life, but we're going to talk more about this, because the rest of Daniel really is talking about the prophecies that lead up to the last day. One of the really cool prophecies in Daniel is Daniel 8, because it talks about this ram and a goat, and the two horns of the ram and the goat, and like, what is all of this? It's really it's very confusing. What does all that mean? But really all we need to do is, we need to go and look at the interpretation. But one of the things that we're going to talk about is what Jesus talked about, that and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. This is talking about the Antichrist.
Mhm.
And out of this things happening in the world, there's going to come out a little horn, which is also what's talked about in Daniel 7. Remember, there's a little horn. This horn, right? A little horn, as it says here, right? This is the Antichrist. Again, it's talking about the Antichrist here, right? The little horn is the Antichrist. And by him, the daily sacrifice was taken away. This is what we're going to see also in Daniel 11, Daniel 12. This is the abomination of desolation.
So why is he called the little horn?
It's just a symbolic thing.
Oh,
He's not going to, I don't think there's going to be anything that literally makes him like a horn of some kind, but it's just a symbolic thing. But here again in Daniel 11, the Antichrist will rise, and he's going to pollute the sanctuary of strength, take away the daily sacrifice, and place the abomination that maketh desolate.
Yeah.
So remember what Jesus said in Matthew 24. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, that's what we just read. We just read that. That's the abomination of desolation. Then will be great tribulation. Right? So we know this is the end time that he's talking about here. The great tribulation is going to start when the Antichrist takes over the world. So the abomination of desolation that we're talking about here is it's also where it says here, the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up. The daily sacrifice being taken away and the abomination are at the same event. When the Antichrist takes over, he's going to stop the daily sacrifice and he's going to become the abomination of desolation.
mhm.
So when we see this here in Daniel 8, we know that this is the Antichrist that he's talking about here. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a second, but the interpretation of the vision tells us exactly what this is, because we don't have to try to figure out what it meant. He said, the ram are the kings of Media and Persia. So Daniel, remember when Babylon was taken over by the Medes and the Persians, Daniel was under the rule of Darius as an old man. Daniel actually saw this. He actually saw this prophecy come to pass. And the ram is Daniel did not see this. He saw the Medes and the Persians, but this prophecy is about Greek, the Alexander the Great taking over and defeating the Medes and the Persians. That's what this prophecy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse things there. Daniel saw the Medes and the Persians take over from Babylon, but this prophecy, the ram is Media Persia and the rough goat is Grecia. And so this prophecy is literally talking about when Alexander the Great took over the world, or the known world at the time, and began the Greek Empire. That's what this prophecy literally is talking about. This he-goat and the ram, it's talking about the king, or the king of Greece, Alexander the Great, defeating the Medes and the Persians. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, this is something that we can see from history now, that at the time of Daniel, this was a couple hundred years into the future. Because the Medes and the Persians, how long did the Medes and the Persians rule? I have it on my my thing here. Let's see. if I go here, I have a little list. The Medes and the Persians ruled. Oops, it's up here. Yeah. So they ruled for, it was 539 BC when they took over. They defeated Babylon, and they ruled until Alexander the Great defeated them in 331 BC. So it was about 200 years, just a little bit more than 200 years. So this was at the time of Daniel, and he saw the Medes and the Persians as an old man take over. And then the prophecy that we just read was this that happened 200 years later. It's really cool because Daniel actually prophesied about something that's happened already. That we can look back in history and know exactly what it was. So, and in the later time of their kingdom, right? And this is something that we see in both Daniel 8 and Daniel 11. Is when the Greek Empire ended, it was broken up into 4 pieces. And there were basically four kingdoms that came from that before the Romans took over. And it says that in the later time of their kingdom, now you have to remember, this is all talking about world events all the way to the time of Christ and the time of the Antichrist. And in the later time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to a full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. That's the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I like to point this out because this is something that most, I haven't seen anybody else actually get this, where he says, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation? So, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. How long is that going to be? He asked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the part of the prophecy, right, it's not talking about this part of the prophecy. It's not talking about Alexander the Great. It's talking about the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, which is...
People are sacrificing animals when they went back to having sacrifices.
What?
Is that what it's talking about?
Oh, well, so yes, the Jews are clamoring for their temple to be rebuilt
now,
that they can resume animal sacrifices.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's
what
talking
they're
about the daily sacrifices.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And that's what the Antichrist, when he takes over, is going to stop the daily sacrifice
Mhm.
immediately and send all the Jews or all the Muslims in the area of
To kill
Judea and
Jews.
Samaria to wipe out all the Jews there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the point I'm making here is, so this part of the vision is this part of the prophecy. And he says 2,300 days, and then shall the sanctuary be cleansed, which this will be the end when Christ returns. So 2,300 days from the time of this guy, he's going to wax great, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to wax great. It says here he's going to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when the Antichrist will claim to be the Mahdi. I'm absolutely certain. This is when he's going to stand up and create that 10 nation union, the fourth beast of Daniel 7 here, this 10-horned beast. That's what's going to happen here in Daniel 8 when he stands up. And it tells us it's going to be 2,300 days before the end. Right? 2,300 days before the end, when Christ returns and cleans everything up, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen, which we also see in Daniel 12. We'll see in just a minute. So 2,300 days is 6.3 years. So we can figure out how long this is going to happen, right? Because let's go into Daniel 9. Now, Daniel 9 has a very nice, awesome prayer that he prays in there. But then he sees a vision. He's given the interpretation of the vision, which is the confirmation of the covenant that we were talking about. 70 weeks were determined, and 70 weeks of years. So a total of 490 years in this prophecy. 483 years were to the Messiah. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 69 of those weeks. 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So 62 plus 7 is 69. So 69 of those 70 weeks up to Messiah the Prince, and to the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, which happened in Ezra. Where's Ezra? Got to find Ezra.
Right there.
Happened in Ezra. The first year Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of the mouth by Jeremiah might be filled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, the king of Persia. They made a proclamation throughout his kingdom and put it in writing to build Jerusalem. Right? That's what we're seeing right there. And then I think it's again in 4. There's actually a couple of different places in here where it mentions that, but this is the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem right here. God put it in his heart. God stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia. So God put it in his heart to give this command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, which is exactly what we see in Daniel. Going forth of the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. So from that point, it was 483 years to Christ. And then notice that it says after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. So it's 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So 69 weeks. But after those 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off because he was killed, right? But then the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, which they did in 70 AD. But it goes on with, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. So the prince that shall come was the last person mentioned. The prince that shall come, right? The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So when the city and the sanctuary was destroyed, the prince had not come yet. It's the prince that shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and he will confirm the covenant for 1 week. So that last week, the final week of the 70 weeks, comes at the end with the Antichrist. It's going to be the same thing, where he's going to be the overspreading of abominations. He shall make it desolate. This is the abomination of desolation when the Antichrist takes over the world. So this final week is the final 7 years that's going to start when he confirms the covenant with many. This is what we're talking about. The confirmation of the covenant will begin the final 7 years. That's exactly what all that means. So this final 7 years will begin, when that peace treaty is signed. It's very likely going to be the Abraham Accords. It might even be this fall, where they'll sign a peace treaty. with many. And we know that one of those people, he will be one of many who signs that peace treaty.
Yep.
So we'll know that one of the people that signs that peace treaty is going to be the Antichrist.
Ooh, that should be interesting.
And very. Yes.
Wow.
So Daniel 8 talks about the Antichrist. Daniel 9 talks about the Antichrist. Daniel 10 kind of goes into this vision. It doesn't really have anything pertaining to the Antichrist, but it's talking about, well, Daniel was mourning and fasting for 3 full weeks. He fasted for 3 full weeks. And the interesting thing about this is he was fasting to get understanding of the vision. But notice this, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me. So here comes, right? He was fasting and praying, and a hand touched him. And it's an angel that came, right, to give him the understanding. I'm now, unto thee I am now sent, right? And, from the first day that thou did set thine heart to understand, and chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. And he had to call Michael, the archangel, to help him to get through the prince of the kingdom of Persia. There was a demonic devil that was holding off the angel from coming to Daniel. And he had to get Michael to come help him to get through so he could get through to Daniel.
What?
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's really cool. And then he says, I'm come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days. And then Daniel 11 is where he goes into the explanation of the latter days, where it again talks about the Medes and the Persians, right? There shall stand up yet 3 kings of Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than all. He's talking about the 4 kings that came after Alexander the Great. No, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is where he talks about Alexander the Great. They shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer. But he'll stir up all the realm of Grecia. And then this is when Alexander the Great, just as it talks about in chapter 8 in that prophecy, will stand up. And then when his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, this is where his kingdom is broken into 4 parts, as it also talks about in Daniel 8. And then it goes through a lot of a branch of her roots, and this king of the south, and then there's this other guy, and then another guy, and then, and there's all of these people and all of these events that it talks about up until he's going to stumble and fall and not be found. So this last king is going to stumble and fall and not be found. And then in his estate, a raiser of taxes will stand, but he's only going to rule for a few days. And then a vile person will stand up. That is the Antichrist.
So somebody else is going to stand up before him,
Yes.
only for a couple of days.
Right. A few days.
I didn't hear about that.
So we don't know exactly who the king of the north and the king of the south are yet. A lot of people try to say it's already happened. I don't think so. I think that it has not happened yet, because it talks about this, and then what happens here, and then this guy stands up, and it's only for a few days.
Yeah, I wonder who
And
that
then
is.
the Antichrist takes over.
So that person that's supposed to stand up for a couple of days, where is he going to be? Obviously, it's going to be in the Middle East, not in America
Right.
or
We
Europe.
don't know what nation that will be yet.
Oh,
Right. So,
Interesting.
but then, and this is why we're watching everything that happens in the Middle East. We're watching the new ruler of Syria, because could he be the king of the north or the king of the south? We don't know yet.
I think so.
You know what? A lot of people think that Erdogan in Turkey is the king of the north. It might
You
be.
convinced me.
It might be. We'll see how it all plays out when it happens.
I think so.
But this is the Antichrist. And this is the part of the prophecy. And one thing we have to remember is this goes into a lot of things that the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to work deceitfully and make a league with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
The arms of the flood shall be over, he's going to come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. He's going to be placed into power, and he's going to work deceitfully and fool a lot of the people that are helping him.
That's the guy from Syria.
I know, right? And so he's gonna end up taking over the world. And then an arm shall stand on his part, right? He's gonna have armies behind him. And that's when they're going to place him in power. They're going to place him in power, which is the abomination of desolation, and take away the daily sacrifice.
So what is there? So who are they talking about right now on there? Are they talking about the
Antichrist?
This is the Antichrist,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
And these are the armies, the nations he'll have behind him. Yes. And he's going to corrupt by flatteries. The people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits, and they that understand among the people shall instruct many. That's us. We're going to see what's going on here, and we're going to tell people what's going on as it's happening. And then, it goes into a lot of things that also we see in Revelation 13 about the Antichrist. There's a lot to talk about him, but I want to continue because we're going to run out of time. And I want to continue and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. He's going to place his rule will come from Jerusalem. And that's even the false prophecies that Satan set up in Islam, is that the caliphate will be restored by the Mahdi, and he will set it up and rule from Jerusalem. The same thing that the Antichrist is going to do here. And it says, and yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And then most people, you have to understand that chapter numbers and verses were inserted by men way after the fact to make it to give us the ability to reference parts of the Bible, to find things. This was one letter. Chapter 11 is talking about the Antichrist, and he'll come to his end. He's going to rule. He's going to come to his end, and at that time. So this is not a break of any kind. This is, and we can see why, because it's talking about the same thing from the time the daily sacrifice, right? Talking about the Antichrist again. At that time shall Michael stand up, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was, which is exactly what Jesus said in Matthew 24, right? When you see the abomination of desolation, then shall be great tribulation. That's exactly the same thing that we're seeing here in Daniel 12. Is this time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. So this is the great tribulation that Jesus spoke of.
So what gospel does it, where it says spoken by Daniel, the prophet Daniel?
Daniel the
Or-
prophet.
Matthew 24
Matthew 24.
and Mark 13
Spoken
both
of,
say this. When you see the abomination of desolation,
spoken
this is
of by-
Jesus says, when you see this, then, you know, all this stuff's going to happen. That's when the great tribulation is going to start. And then, you know, that's when he's going to appear in the clouds of heaven at the end of the tribulation,
Mhm.
because it says immediately after the tribulation is when he's going to appear in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. So it tells us the timeline of these events. And we even know the exact time of that, because we remember we saw that it's going to be for a time, times, and half a time. And Daniel, we saw in Revelation 13, it's for 42 months that this Antichrist will be in power. And we know that when he takes over, that's when the Great Tribulation is going to start. The abomination, when we see the abomination of desolation, that's when the tribulation starts. So we know that he's going to rule for 3.5 years. There's no doubt whatsoever of that.
Mhm.
So when we look at the rest of this vision, we see again that it's going to be for a time, times and a half. So once again, we see that it's going to be a 3.5 year period. And what's going to be the end of these things? Well, this is where he says, go thy way, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. This is how God created the inability of people to understand this until now. And that's why you have so many false prophecy interpretations and so many false teachers out there regurgitating the lies that they've been taught by people that didn't understand. That came, literally, a lot of these things came from the 1800s. They're still teaching them today. But now that we're at the time of the end, we can see, because the words weren't closed up and sealed forever, just until the time
So
of
I
the
wonder
end.
how you would teach prophecy in, say, the 1920s, because nobody knew anything about Islam.
Well,
So how would you teach
you could
it?
do what we do primarily, which is teach about what we know is going to happen.
Right.
But we're not going to say what it is. We're watching.
Yeah.
Now,
So they wouldn't even know.
they wouldn't have known, and they would have said, we got to
Right.
watch and see if it comes in our lifetime. But see, the difference between then and now is Jesus said, when you see, let's look at it. Jesus said,
armies.
no. He said, when you see these signs.
Mhm.
So again, when is the end of the world document that I have here? He said, oh, what's going on with my website all of a sudden? He said, when you see these signs, this generation shall not pass away.
So
Or he
they
didn't-
might
he
not have
didn't say
seen those
those-
signs.
He didn't say those words, but he said, when you see these things come to pass, right? This generation shall not pass away.
So they wouldn't have seen some of the signs.
Right. All
in
of these signs
1920s.
weren't happening in 1920. Right. So the generation alive when the signs appear right now will not grow old and die before the end of the world.
See, we see all those signs, and that's our generation.
Exactly.
We're the last generation.
Well, even for us, there's a lot of things that haven't happened yet.
Right. But all of the signs are coming to pass.
Yeah, all the signs.
And
Prophecy is what you're talking about.
we're watching Satan setting up the world for the Antichrist in Islam right now.
Mhm.
And we're seeing the end coming upon us. We're seeing, when the confirmation of the covenant is signed, when that peace treaty signed, we know there's only 7 years left. Period.
Yes.
Mhm.
We know that for a fact.
I know a lot
So-
of people are going to go, oh, whatever, but you better,
But wait
You
until
better
they sign
listen.
the agreement. You wait, you
Yeah.
watch.
yeah,
And so, and you know, there's
better
a lot of
listen.
people, and here's where a lot of people are going to get disillusioned with Christianity, because all the
Yeah.
false prophecy teachers, when the confirmation of the covenant happens, all the false prophecy teachers that say there's a 7-year tribulation
Oh,
are
boy.
going to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to say, well, see, none of this is true. And Satan has set up these liars to do just that. When the confirmation of the covenant is signed and there's not all of a sudden all of these horrible things happening in the world, they're going to say, see, it's not even true.
Right.
Yeah, because the tribulation isn't for the world; it's for Christians,
Right.
the
And it's
people
not-
who really love God.
And it's
Right.
only 3.5 years. It's
3.5
only
years.
during the time of the rule of the Antichrist.
And then they're going to say, oh, okay, so this is all hogwash. They're going to turn their back on this video. They're going to say it's all hogwash. And then it might be too late for them. They may see
they'll-
it as garbage, and then they're going to take the mark.
They'll think that, oh, interfaithism is true, and they'll convert to Catholicism and take the mark and be damned. Yes.
Yeah.
I can
Exactly.
understand why Jesus said, "Many are called, few
But
are
few are
chosen."
chosen.
Yeah.
Because just
Yeah.
what we're talking about now, people still are not going to believe.
No.
When nothing happens and they say, there's supposed to be great tribulation, but there's peace.
Yeah.
They're
And
gonna
that's the
turn
thing.
from God, and they're going to say, that's false.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because the real prophecy is that there's going to be a peace treaty signed, and that there's going to be a period of 3.5 years where it's a false peace.
Mhm.
And then the Antichrist is going to take over.
Mhm.
You know, that when he,
Peace.
and remember, 6.3 years is the time from when he stands up and begins gathering his power. And I believe that that's when he's going to create that fourth beast, the 10-nation union. And he's going to claim to be the Mahdi of Islam. And those 10 kings are going to say, yes, he is, and give him their power. And why? You might say, well, how?
Count on
they'll
Turkey
know.
being the first one to sign up.
And it's because God puts it in their hearts to fulfill his will and give their kingdom to the Antichrist. God is the one that makes them say, yes, you're our Mahdi.
Mm-hmm.
As you might think, well, they'll know he's not a godly, they'll know he's not that.
Well,
or, people say, well, there's no way that they'll say that he's the Mahdi. Well, because God puts it in their heart,
Yeah.
it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's for 6.3 years. So
Yeah.
approximately 2.8 years. So before he takes over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's 3.5 years that he's going to rule. But for 6.3 years, he's going to rise in power. So
Yeah.
8 months after the treaty is signed, that's when he's going to stand up and claim to be the Mahdi. And then he's going to have that 10-nation union of the kingdoms, the Islamic kingdoms that give him their power. And then he's going to align with Russia and Germany and Great Britain and create that final empire that's in Revelation 13, where all the nations of Daniel 7 become one and take over the world at the 3.5 year point. So we don't know when the sixth trumpet war happens in there, right?
Yeah.
But I believe the sixth trumpet war is going to come from this, and he's going to rise from the ashes, and the world's going to be clamoring for a savior after the war. And that's when he's going to take over. And that's why the world will give him not just those 10-nation union, not just those 10 nations that claim him as the Mahdi, but the world itself will let him take over as dictator at that point.
And they
when
will
he-
have gone through the fifth trumpet,
right,
which will
the
really
fifth
put
and
the
sixth
world
trumpets.
into chaos.
Right. And so they're going to be clamoring for a savior,
Someone to put some
and
peace into this whole thing.
so that they can, and
Yeah.
Satan's already set up the world to think that the fifth trumpet is going to be aliens.
Yeah.
So they're going to be clamoring for a savior to bring
Mhm.
peace so that they can finally get to Mars and establish a colony there. And, all of this stupid, idiotic stuff that worldly
You know
people
that-
think is going to save us.
Yeah.
You know that airplane they have right now with the bomber, the B-2, I think is what it is. I was watching it at night on the news, and I looked at it and I thought, something like this could actually make people think they're seeing an alien ship, because it was like glowing.
Oh, yeah.
underneath.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that people see that they don't know. It's advanced military equipment that's unknown to us. And
Mhm.
and there's,
Replacing one.
demons pretend
Yeah.
to be aliens. I mean, there's a lot of that. There's tons of that going on. I've got a couple of videos that I've seen where, people have investigated these alien sightings and this automatic writing stuff and everything. And they're demons. They're literally demons pretending to be aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And, I want to say, right before you started talking, I said, these stupid, idiotic people of the world.
Mhm.
And you might say, well, damn, that's a horrible thing to say. And it is. And I apologize. But they are literally. It's like they think that going to Mars is going to save humanity because they don't believe in God. And that is the dumbest thing in the world, because
Yeah.
Romans 1 tells us that everything made by God knows of him.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse. It says that. And, just like when I was an atheist, I would have been all over going to Mars and saving humanity and creating a galactic empire. Oh, yeah, I was all over that. But now that I know God and I know the truth and I know exactly how it's going to play out, I know that that's never going to happen. Not in a world controlled by men.
Mhm.
When Christ returns at the end of the 1,000 years, he's going to recreate the entire universe.
You're going to be Star Wars come to heaven.
Yeah. And we're going to have the whole universe, not just this
Captain Dan.
I
galaxy.
think I'm going to be
The
interested
whole
in that.
universe as our playground.
I'm
when-
not-
I saw this thing on TV. Somebody says there are many galaxies out there. I'm like, duh.
Yeah.
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 You think?
You know why God created the entire universe? Even though he knows he's going to wipe it all out and start over and recreate it all from scratch at the end of the 1,000 years. You know why he did that? To show his majesty and power.
Yeah.
We can see the majesty of God by looking up at the sky.
Mhm.
And our telescopes, we can see the billions of galaxies that are out there and just gape in awe at
Mhm.
the power, the majesty of God.
And guess how
Yeah.
wonderful he is to give that gift to people who hate him.
Oh,
They
I
get to
know.
look up, and there's a
And
lot of
see
people
it.
who are
Yeah.
atheists who will look up in the sky and go, wow, this is so cool. And
Yeah.
he gave that to everyone if they were
Mhm.
interested to just look up
I
or
know.
to look at a waterfall,
The evidence of the majesty of God is
Yeah.
everywhere.
the
And
beauty.
people just deny him.
hmm
They don't care.
But then
Yeah.
there is going to be no excuse. And that is who God is. He's going to say, you had this chance. You saw me here. You saw me there. You looked up in the heavens. You looked in the mountain and said, wow. And you still refused to believe me. And I gave you chance after chance after chance.
Yeah.
And you still denied me. And I'm going to feel really bad for those people.
From the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse.
Yeah. There's
no excuse. Everything made by God knows of him, and the evidence is everywhere, clearly seen. Yeah.
There isn't any excuse. There's not even
No.
excuses for Christians on their lack of obedience. People who
Right.
love God so much, and I believe they truly do, have his word. And I remember when I was riding my bike one time, and it just came to me. I was riding my bike, and this was years ago. This was like the beginning of COVID, maybe a year after that or something. And I was riding my bike and I was praying, and I said out loud, I said, but I was like, Lord, what do you mean by obedience? And then it just started coming to me, like all the scriptures. It's like, do this, do that, do this, do that. There's so many things in the Bible where God says, pray without ceasing. That's a command. You do that. You're obedient. Like there's much answer.
Many commands. And the greatest is to love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
And it just came to me like, well, you already know. It's already in the Bible. I don't even have to ask God that. All I have to do is pick up the word of God. And it says in almost every single verse in the New Testament on how to obey God.
Yeah. And how many times is the word if in the Bible when it's talking about our salvation? A lot. If you love God, if you obey, it's all over. And people that don't really love God, people that don't obey even the very first command, which is to love God, make all kinds of excuses and will just scream at me for saying, oh, it doesn't mean if, even though it says if. Because they don't love God, they don't want to hear anything about obedience. All of the Catholic Churchians just want to go sit in a pew once a week and go and hang out with their social club and call it good. I don't have to do anything. Well, no, you don't, but you're not going to be saved unless you really love God and follow him, as he says, to pick up your cross daily and follow him. Does that mean it's going to be easy? No, picking up your cross is not going to be easy walk in the park, because as soon as you start being obedient to God and loving him, well, all of a sudden, all of your churchian friends start hating you because, what are you doing? You're trying to buy your way into heaven. You're trying to work your way into heaven. You're trying to, they just freak out because they don't want anybody making them look bad.
Or
you can't be doing that because that does that mean I have to do that?
Or they think that you're trying to show them up, like trying to be holier than they are.
Yeah, holier than thou, Bible thumper.
I used to
you're
just trying to be holier than
thou. I know. But when you really love God and you read his word, it's so easy to understand.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's just so clear. And it's his yoke is not heavy, as Jesus said. Being obedient to Jesus it's a joy to those that love him.
He's giving us so many chances right now to come to him.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's being very patient.
People would just quit loving themselves more than him and put him first and let him take care of you.
Yeah.
And your needs.
If they would only. Yeah.
Yeah.
If.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I agree. On that note.
Yeah.
It's
8:30.
It's a wrap.
And mixed videos. I wasn't.
Yeah, we saw it.
I wasn't ignoring you, but I was ignoring you because it is off topic. But I don't know anything about that, so I've never studied.
He said
it.
nothing to do with topic.
Searching in the net to get some info about Daniel's tomb supposedly 3 different tombs.
Interesting,
I would be
Daniel's
very
tomb.
skeptical that any of them are actually Daniel's tomb. I'd have to research it and really dig into, to validating the sources and all of that.
Yeah.
But I never have, so I don't know anything
That's
about
interesting. So when you
Yeah.
do all the research, you just let us know what you came
it.
up with.
Send me an email. I'm going to put my banner up, and then it has all of our channels. It has my email. It has our websites. It has, all of that. And then I'll pray and we'll say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Stop sharing.
end our thing. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back.
So, thank you, Lord, for telling us everything, literally. We're so grateful. And your words are so true. Now that it's the time of the end, the pictures you painted are so clear.
Mm.
And we're just so in awe of you. And so excited watching as these things begin to play out. And we're so excited and can't wait for you to come and put down the governments of men and stop all this evil, wickedness, and wars and all of the murders and the rapes and things that are happening all over the world, and the children just being abused, and just come, Lord, and stop it. Oh, can't wait. Thank you, Lord, for everything. Thank you for all you've done, all you're doing, and all you're about to do. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so mixed videos and Jody. Also, I forgot to bring this up really, really quick. I don't know if anybody saw this on the news, how there were 6 Americans who were detained. I think they were detained in South Korea. They actually caught them in South Korea. They had bottled water, the plastic bottles filled with rice.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
American dollars and Bibles, and they were trying to get them into North Korea.
Mm.
And when I heard this, I just felt so heavy-hearted, and I just started praying for these people, because I'm really, really, if they were trying to do this, I really think that this was so brave to try to smuggle Bibles into North Korea and rice and try to help them. I don't even know what they thought they were doing, because it's really hard.
Jesus said
they were trying to get this stuff to them because they're not allowed to.
Yes, I know.
Not allowed to love God. I mean,
well, they're starving, and they
starving.
don't have the word of God, and they're not allowed to. And
yeah. So I just felt really bad for them.
Jesus said the field is ready and the workers are few. The harvest is ready.
It sounded like,
few.
and what they were trying to do is put the water bottles of rice in the sea, so that it would float towards the shore of North Korea.
Them on the shore.
Yeah.
And that's what, the workers are few, and there's so few now that, you might say, well, there's millions of people out there. Well, yeah, there are millions of people teaching false doctrine, living false doctrine. Churchianity is a lie from Satan, just like Catholicism is a lie from Satan. And all of those workers are working for the devil, not God. To find people actually working for God is a joy and a rarity.
Yeah. Anyway, Jody said that she saw my post, because I actually shared it. It was like on Newsmax or something.
So they got caught in South Korea.
Yeah, they detained them. There were 6 Americans, but they didn't say if they were women, men. There's probably or where they where in America they came from. I really don't know, and I don't know the outcome. But I'm really curious, because I've been really praying that they will just let them go. Because trying to smuggle Bibles, I have to be on their side
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
and the bravery that they felt like they could
And
do
there's
that.
people that
And the
smuggle them into
desperation
China,
that they must have
and
felt.
there's lots of organizations that do that. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was
There's
being
little
bold.
children there that are so poor they've been abandoned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just
Yeah.
picking up crumbs off the ground just to eat.
Yes.
And have to try
I know
and
it's
find
Mhm.
horrific when you find out what's really happening
Right.
in places like North Korea. It's so horrible.
Mhm.
You can't even imagine. You know.
It's really poor there.
Yeah.
They're not taken care of.
Oh, Kim Jong-un. Yeah.
Yeah. So come, Lord Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway, Jody
Yeah.
says amen. Thank you guys. Love you. Love you too, Kurt.
Yeah. And thank you,
have a
Mixed
great
Videos,
week.
for being here and chatting with us. Always appreciate questions and
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah. Everybody who's
Yes.
watching, we appreciate you very much. Thank you. We love you.
Yeah, everybody that doesn't chat, it's okay. We're just glad you're here with us. And everybody that watches later, we love you all.
So make sure that you subscribe to the channel or follow us on Rumble. Kind of start migrating over to Rumble if you can, or also on X. It's on the banner. You can find us. Please give it a big thumbs up. People are not very good at that. Give it a big thumbs up. And then share this video with everyone in your family, people, friends. I mean, just share it. Just try and share it. There's all kinds of videos to share. So if you don't want to do a live stream, share something and get the word out and help us to spread the good news. And then make sure you turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any of those uploads.
It's a triangle.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Don't you remember when Dad was doing the thing? He'd say it's like a triangle when he was leading music, and I was like, "What?" Like the triangle.
The conductor.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, Sissy, I love you. Jody, I love you.
Thank you, Diane.
We'll send your
Always
prayers
appreciate
tomorrow.
you being with us.
Love you.
And
you
we'll
too.
see everybody next Wednesday.
All right. Oh,
Next Wednesday.
last thing for people that haven't gone away yet. Wednesday's going to be our last live for a few weeks. We just have something personal we're doing, and we're not going to be able to do lives for several weeks in July. So next Wednesday will be our last live, and I'll announce it again.
Okay. So we'll see everybody on Wednesday, though. Have a good week.
Wednesday.
Yeah.